Thank you so much, Chanel, for reading my mind. All right. So today's Ken is the ninth one officially, but unofficially, I think it's the 10th one or 11th one. Okay. The future of work, supporting high school students to navigate a changing market. This is something Kim and I have been talking about for a second, and I'm so glad that it's happening today. Before we get started, and before I turn it over to my colleagues, Kim and Lydell, I just want to remind you of a few norms, and in particular, I want to remind you of changing your name to show your actual name and your organization or school. That is super helpful for us as far as taking attendance. So please do that. And then please also engage. We're going to have opportunities to unmute. We're going to have opportunities to share in the chat. We're going to have polls, all sorts of little opportunities. Please do that and turn on your camera. It all helps the conversation and it all helps us feel really good together. And I think that's all I have to say. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to stop my share. And I'm going to turn it over to Kim and Lida.
Good morning, folks. Good morning. My name is Lydell Carter. There may be some folks on the call who I know. It's been a while since I've had the great opportunity to come into a CAAN meeting. So I'm welcoming myself back, and I hope you all welcome me. I'm going to be a co-pilot today with my partner, Kim Cambridge. But quick introduction, I am the Senior Post-Secondary Partnership Manager here at New Visions. I've been at New Visions for more than a few minutes now, and so pleased to get started with this conversation that we hope is really one that is supportive of some of the thinking of folks who we know are doing amazing work with young people in New York City public schools, and sparks a bit of interest around what's happening in the job market right now and how we all can work collectively to support students to prepare for what they're going to encounter. Well, some of them are dealing with it right now, but many will be dealing with this in the next 10 to 15 years or so. And we want to have an exchange. We want to, really glean from folks who are really doing this work. We come with the approach that there's a wisdom in the crowd of folks who come together to have topical conversations, and we want to be a part of that. So let's get going. So today's objectives are going to dive into understanding the landscape of the workforce and impacts that it can have on current high school students. Identify a few priorities. We have some that we have really attached ourselves to based upon the work we do with many of our partners who are supporting our schools, what they're telling us they know students need to have, both practice and hopefully master to be successful in this evolving workforce. Talk about some strategies to support students in navigating the new job market, and have a conversation about building partnerships. This idea of practice is vitally important, and these partnerships are mechanisms to help students kind of work on building those skills. But we're going to start out. Sandy talked about being engaging, and so we're going to do a poll. This is like a New Visions tradition. I have about 4 poll questions, and I want for folks to give it some consideration and let us know how you're feeling. So the first poll question is, would you rather help a student find a paid internship in a field they are interested in, or an unpaid internship at their dream company? Let's kind of get some responses to that first one. And as soon as you're done with that one, hop into the other poll questions. But I'm eager for folks to jump into that first one and give us some responses before we move on. Now, Sandy, I can't see any quick responses to the polls. I don't know if folks can engage.
Are
But I
you
don't see
able to
any.
see the poll? Oh, okay,
Oh,
great.
now
You
I see it
got the
popping up.
poll. Okay, great.
Cool. Very good. Now this first one is done. Let's jump into that second poll question. Wow, that was like 100%. And would you rather spend 5 hours searching for online internship postings for a student or attend a 1 hour job fair with them? And for folks, kind of give us your response to that. And I'm sure you all can see kind of the direction this is going into. As soon as you're done with that one, we'll move on to that third question. And then that last question, I'll just read them out. Uh, Third question is, would you rather help a student find a micro internship or complete 20 hours of community service? And the last question is, would you rather attend a 4 hour financial literacy workshop with a student or teach them how to write a resume and cover letter? Sandy, I'm thinking we can just give this maybe 30 more seconds and then share out the polls. Now, hope and desire is that, going through these questions will kind of wet your whistle a bit about what we're going to tackle in some ways, but also share out what your experiences are and where you like to spend your time in supporting students in this process. And Sandy, I think we're good. Why don't we share the results? So as you can see, based upon that first response, 64% of the folks who responded, they'd much rather find a paid internship in a field that students are interested in. That second one, uh, attending a job fair, much better use of time. That third question, complete 20 hours of computer service, interesting, with a student. This last question, attend a 4 hour financial literacy workshop with a student. That kind of follows what we've been hearing from schools in particular about this increased desire to have these financial literacy conversations. FinLit is now a growing, kind of growing market, and an area in which the Department of Education has now been spending more time trying to ensure that students are leaving with certain skills in this area. And so this kind of really tracks. But I thank folks who kind of lent their expertise and their experience to our poll. We're going to stop sharing and move on. So our agenda for today, we just finished the welcome and kind of given the framing of today. We're going to have a conversation about the shifting workforce landscape, priority skills, and we have some activities. I do want to say that we focused on 10th through 12th grade for the activities that we're going to share and kind of the priority skills, largely because our belief in this work we've done for so many years is that the ninth grade is such a transitional year. I'm sure there might be some schools who do some work in that area, but for us, we've kind of focused on 10th through 12th grade, and the resources that we'll share are kind of directed towards those grade levels. We have some resources and tools, and we'll just close out with an evaluation. All right. So getting started with this idea of the shifting landscape. I'm going to let this resonate with you for a second. Like, just take a look at the screen. We've kind of highlighted these areas, but I want to kind of talk through and give some context to them. Starting out with this idea of the employment prospects for young people, how it's kind of gone through a certain amount of changes over the last couple of years, and this is particularly been influenced by really federal policies, the shifts in economic trends, and an evolving labor market over the last few years, and the industries that have been affected um, have really focused on food services, um, arts, recreation, manufacturing. These have been the leading areas that young people have been able to find employment for the last few years. It should not be a surprise, hopefully, that most of the jobs held by young people are part-time. They're in school, so they can't work full-time. That should not be a surprise. Um, But one thing that has really been an interesting evolution over time is the influence of AI, and how this has really led to a reduction in the amount of entry-level positions that students have been able to acquire, both in terms of internships and jobs going forward. AI really has the ability and is eliminating certain tasks that were filled in the past by young people. Administrative tasks have really been superseded by the influence of AI. That's reduced hiring. And the roles that were these entry level roles, like the junior roles that existed in the past, those are no longer available in the same way they were in the past because AI has kind of taken over those opportunities. We'll see more and more that employers are utilizing um, automated tools to do things like identifying who will be that next person to take on the job, the data mining of resumes, the ability to utilize more and more video interviews, personality tests that have been utilized by employers. This idea of gamifying assessment tests to make key decisions about hiring has been leading the industry. And for those who might not be familiar, this idea of gamified assessments, it kind of incorporates game elements into the traditional methods to identify, who's going to be that next person you're going to hire. Gamified tests utilize things like point systems and badges and leaderboards, progress boards, rewards and challenges. That's the way this process has kind of moved in the current stages. Um, this last thing about employers utilizing um, this changing in the markets has been realized in many different ways. And I do want to talk about like how the challenges for young people to be employed has been kind of tested out in certain states. And in particular, how the changing market, um, particularly in this political landscape, has uh, made certain uh, decisions around who should be working and the types of jobs that should be available for them, um, has affected kind of the child labor laws in many cases. There are four states in particular that I would highlight that have made changes to their labor laws for like 16 and 17-year-olds. Indiana, in particular, has repealed all work hour restrictions for 16 and 17-year-olds. Ohio has enacted labor laws reducing restrictions on minors working. West Virginia is another state has now considering passing laws weakening child labor restrictions. Kentucky is another one of the states that's considered passing bills that would weaken child labor laws in particular. So, while they're reducing some opportunities, now they're looking at how can we identify younger people to play some of these roles that adults had have filled in many cases. In some cases, situations in which folks who are migrants were doing jobs. Those jobs might, in certain states, be now uh, filled by younger people. Florida is another state I want to talk about that it's now considering a bill. I think it's House Bill 49, which is set up to kind of uh, create more restrictions, that actually reduce the restrictions around minors, again, age 16 and 17. Um, it may allow minors to work more hours, um, which includes moving beyond. Usually, if minors work half day, they might do 20 hours a week. They're looking to extend that to 30 hours a week, well beyond what was the tradition. And also, considering the time frames in which students traditionally would work, so that students can work up to 8 hours, a day before they have to go back to school, considering extending opportunities for students to work between 6:30 and up to 11 o'clock, even on nights in which they're school nights. And so this labor market changes right now, is being set up in such a way that might really, really be detrimental for our students going forward.
Like Lydell, before you move to your next slide, I know Michael Gordon had a question. Do you want to unmute
Sure,
Michael?
of course I do. You know me, Sandy. I'm not shy.
I know.
So hearing these rules, and I mean, I've lived in states that have semi-laxed rules before, but does it really feel like it's a good thing for a high school student to work until 11, 12 o'clock at night and then have to be at school the next morning, have to get up and then, I mean, I know when I worked even till 9 o'clock at night and then had to go to school the next day, I'd go to school tired. Like it was detrimental to the education process. So is this really a good thing for young people?
No, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is actually the worst thing for young people. And if you think about some of the assaults that have been happening on traditional public education, these things kind of track. They're going to have to replace, based upon the direction, not to get too political, but we can all kind of see what's going on, that this administration is going in. We're Xing out a certain amount of workers who have traditionally been doing jobs. They're going to have to replace that labor market. And in the minds of certain political leaders and people
Mhm.
in policy positions, a labor market is already here. And this might be a mechanism. And again, you always have these test states who are doing things to see whether or not they can do like a blanket shift towards this, that are looking at this core group of young people to kind of fill those positions. And they can't do that in the traditional scenarios. And so you weaken the laws, the child labor laws, to allow you to tap into this potential group of employees going forward.
So we're working more towards their dumbing down of our country. Got it. That makes sense.
That's right. Okay, so now here's another scenario that I kind of want you to take a look at, and hopefully, again, this kind of tracks in terms of the future of jobs. Um, I would have folks kind of take a look at this. And this was an item that we pulled from the World Economic Forum. And this is really the Future of Jobs report from 2025. And it is a listing of the largest growing and declining jobs by 2030. I would have folks kind of let this resonate for a bit. And I wonder, and I don't know if we have time going forward, if you can kind of pick out one thing that surprised you both from the growing side and the declining side of what is anticipated over the next, I guess, 5 years or so, because this will directly affect some of the students that we're working with. And if you can kind of pop that into the chat, we can kind of jump that back into that a little bit later. But these are just the kind of the top 10 that we pulled off of that report. Cool. All right, so I'm going to transition now and introduce my friend Kim Scott.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. So I want to talk a little bit about the skills students need and want to be very clear. Actually, I see that Serge, before I go on, raised their hand. If I am catching that correctly, do you want to unmute and ask your question or make your comment, Serge?
Sure, I am so sorry. I was not going to say anything. It's my first time here, so I apologize, but I couldn't keep quiet because in the growing section, it's interesting that there's a growing section for truck drivers. Yet we've created generative AI that will be able to actually have self-driving cars within the next 10 years, to the point where one of the biggest automotive crisis is going to be drivers, because the majority of the jobs throughout the entire world encompasses on drivers. So it's interesting to see that, knowing that the projected thought and ideas are having self-sustaining trucks and cars drive themselves. Yet it's still like it's just such a I don't I'm trying to make heads about that, but I hope you can help me understand that.
Mhm. So
So go, Kim.
no, I'll go
Yeah.
after you, Lida.
Yeah, I
Mhm,
mean,
mhm.
I think my immediate reaction to that is that the projections are right, but we also have a kind of a reductive thought process with this current administration about this desire to bring back manufacturing jobs and certain jobs that are labor intensive before yielding as much to the AI side. And so to make this growing sector of kind of really work, we're going to have to do something with the Department of Transportation and have a transportation secretary that's willing to automate some of the highways to really make this work the way it's happening in some other countries. I'm not sure if there's a spirit to do that in this country right now. It might change with a new administration, but I think this report is probably reflective of maybe some of the desires of how um, the previous administration was pushing forward and thinking that we want to move towards more automation because that's where the world is going. And I'm not exactly sure if our current administration is in that same ballpark. And so that's where I think there might be some kind of mismatch. Serge, hopefully that's kind of answers. That's my perspective. Kim, I'm not sure if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, I want to say that that we also have to remember that for some of these jobs that are growing, that we have to consider and attach that to specific industries, right? So we are moving it more towards in terms of automated AI, driverless cars and so on. But when we think about the longer kind of like longer haul driving in terms of, I'll use the example of like a truck that's doing a delivery to Walmart, depending on where that space is, it makes that determination and the difference. But these long haul truckers that typically have existed in a previous way, I think is going to shift. I think that there is a lot that we are still deconstructing. We will see what this looks like as the labor market continues to shift and change in terms of thinking about what's growing right now. And Lydell made um, a connection to this when we think about farm workers, laborers, and agricultural workers, and so on. We see what's happening right now in terms of there's typically, when we think about their populations of folks that actually follow the farming industry. And so that is shifting and changing. There is also a much more industry in terms of more urban farming that is happening, that is growing in a very different way. So it's looking at exactly where it is, what how that is supporting a particular state, area overall, but still is starting to shake out. But something for us to consider what this means now in our conversations with young people and thinking about the skill sets that they are beginning to engage and practice with overall. And I want to say, this is the kind of conversation and dialogue we want to have. So please utilize the chat, use the raise hand feature. We want this to be an engaging conversation. Jackie, I see that you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to also point out that these are predictions made by companies and organizations that try to predict future trends. And so, with any prediction, some of these might be right on the mark, and some of these might not be so much on the mark when we think about the future, because, of course, no one has a crystal ball. So, I just want to also keep that in mind as we're looking and just keeping that in mind that some of these might not make sense now, but might make sense later, or some of them don't might make sense now, and in the future they won't make sense either. So just to keep that in mind too.
And I want to say thank you. Jackie is also one of our team members. So thanks, Jackie, for jumping in. So I want to move to just talk a little bit about the skills that students need to succeed. First, I want to disclaimer. We know I'm presenting 8 skills here. Am I right? It's an 8, 9.
Nice.
These are a baseline. It is not all of the skills that young people need, but we work very closely with corporate partners in providing career exposure experiences and workplace learning opportunities for young people. And so have really worked with them to kind of like narrow down. And we were like, if there was just kind of like, if you don't do anything else, what are the things that you need to start to work with young people on more consistently to make sure that there's a baseline for? These are the 9 skills that have been stated consistently. What we need to add to this now, and we are in conversations with that conversations, is about emotional intelligence, but we're going to focus on these skills that are here for right now in terms of thinking about it overall. And so really it's about taking the next initiative, thinking about what productive problem solving is, what that looks like. That there is digital literacy, and coupled with that now that needs to be expanded out. We're making a distinction about AI literacy and what that looks like in the workplace. Continually thinking about work ethic, about financial literacy, skilled communication, professional behavior, collaboration and teamwork, and then critical thinking. And so, what I want to, in this portion, kind of like really talk about is really thinking about when we talk about particular grades and knowing where the labor market is moving, knowing what is happening right now in terms of young people being able to find employment, one, from a baseline, this conversation is really going to lay the groundwork of what you're going to be thinking about for the new school year because really, for summer youth, for young people getting employment during the summer, that is work that should have started in January. And there are a few things that are open right now, but we all know that there are a number of programs that have are received grant funding, that they have streamlined the number of slots that are available for young people to participate in and to gain access to. We know that there is some programming that was slated to start that is not starting because there are questions about what long-term funding sources will look like. And I'll talk really transparently as we are thinking about some of the work that we have with corporate partners. We have been put on a pause, and we're on a pause a bit where they are at a point where they're having to reevaluate what they can possibly do, what they can possibly support as it relates to engagement with young people. And again, being very direct and so on, a lot of the work that we do with our corporate partners is really about providing access for all young people who don't typically have access to certain industries like finance, marketing, business. And of course, that is all associated and connected with us making if you think about the communities that we're working with, that there you have partners who are now trying to be really intentional in thinking about that they're making opportunities available to all students and not necessarily just kind of like elevating particular groups over that. So that has been pretty challenging for us as we're thinking about how do we provide opportunities for young people to really build skill sets and start to begin practicing what this looks like. So we're starting to think a little bit about as we talk about grade levels, if there was a priority skill that you had to think about from that list of 9, what would that be? And that's giving consideration to the population of students that you are working with, communities that you're in, what you are seeing overall. And so what I'm presenting here is just a sample of work that we are doing right now when we're thinking about the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders that we're working with, that if we had to identify 2 priority skills that we would be focusing on in a particular year for a particular grade level, this is what we're presenting here, right? This is not, again, the list that we're saying is for everyone, but just something for you to start to think about. We've laid out for you where the landscape is moving, what we see is happening right now with young people, and it's starting to dig deep in to say what is going to make the difference for these particular grade levels. And we also have to operate from the place that young people in high school are now, and they've done this previously, but it's even more so important. High school students are going to be competing for part-time positions that college students are going to be going for, as well as adults who are now in a position of needing to have additional part-time work in order to meet what their needs are. So we have to make sure that their skill sets are on par, that they are operating in the basis where they are competing, that they are someone that organizations, businesses are going to look at with real interest and not be dismissed because they're a high school student, and also recognizing that a lot of the space that a particular group might have given a student because they were a high school student, meaning if they submitted a resume and there were grammatical errors on that resume, some businesses might overlook that after they've interviewed the student overall because the job market is shifting and the access is not the same. Those kinds of like passes are not going to continue to be there. And so want to start to just ground you in this and thinking a little bit about what are those priority skill sets that you are thinking about for your communities, that you feel like you need to work on to make sure that young people in those grade levels are able to successfully transition into a workspace. And what I'd like to now move to and ask folks to think about, and we're only going to take a few minutes for this, is we want you to start to think a little bit about the population of students that you are working with, right? And we want you to choose just one grade level. We're going to, in the chat, we're going to link two resources. One is the document of the skills that students need to succeed, which I referenced. And then it is this grid here. And we just want you to take about 5 minutes to choose a grade. Choose a grade that you are thinking about in your school, in your community-based organization, that you're noticing that they need a little bit more work as you think about where possibilities are going to be for them. And we want you to choose just one priority skill that you would elevate in working with those students. And if there's a particular activity that you would want to think about and with some specificity that you would want to focus in deep on with those young people. So again, we're only going to take about 5 minutes, and then we're going to just ask folks to unmute and just share one or two examples of what they're thinking about and what that looks like for those students overall. So, and when we unmute, we're going to ask you why you chose the grade, which skill that you prioritize, and then to think a little bit about how the skill in that grade group is impacting your thinking and planning for next year. So again, just 5 minutes to do that. Not a lot of deep work, just a start of a conversation. And please let us know if anyone has trouble um, opening up the documents. Mhm. I'm good. Mhm. Okay. Just in terms of for time's sake, want to do a check-in. I know folks are. If you're still working, please feel free to continue to do so, but want to just jump in. And if there's anyone who would be willing to just share with us what you're thinking about in terms of a particular grade and a skill that you think that you'd like to prioritize as you think about next year and where we need to go.
I'll go. So I'm gonna just focus on 10th grade because
Mhm.
why not? I put take initiative, skilled communication, digital literacy, and critical thinking. I think that the earlier that we focus on those specific traits, the better set up our students to be to move forward into the other steps. I think that those are really the foundation and the building blocks that allow them to really work on the other things that are on that list, such as professional behavior, collaboration, work ethic, financial literacy. I think that you need those foundational things, and those are more foundational to me.
Mhm.
To be initiative, to take the initiative to actually work on those things, to know how to communicate and understand and ask the questions when you don't understand those things. Digital literacy, well, just in this world, is important regardless. So, making sure that they have more than just their tablet and phone literacy and understanding how to use Instagram and TikTok. And then critical thinking, because all of the things that follow really need them to be able to think, especially financial literacy, to be able to think critically and understand those things.
That's great. And thank you so much for that, Michael. I also, and again, I'm thinking about what you've highlighted overall, it's going back in terms of when we think about the future of jobs and what we know is in terms of that growing market overall. One of the pieces is on there is software and application developers, or also in terms of thinking about the food and beverage um, serving workers. And I highlight the food and beverage serving workers because I don't know, many of you would go into a lot of restaurants and so on now. On the tables, they now have where you are paying directly on the tables. And your salesperson needs to know, like if an issue happens, they need to be able to navigate through and knowing exactly how to help you with that, how to move it, how to make that difference. It seems like a very small thing, but it's something that has a really deep impact overall. And Serge, I see that you also said you chose, it looks like you chose 10th, and that you're thinking about communication, AI, and financial literacy. One thing I want to highlight, which is probably the easiest win when you're thinking about these skill sets and how you're starting to support that. Um, we also talk a little bit about, and we have done this in the past, about how do you start considering thinking about employment opportunities for young people during the summer. One of the easiest wins, and we know that this is by lottery, it's not a guarantee, but one of the easiest wins in terms of thinking about skill sets of young people being able to practice is having them apply for summer youth employment. That is the baseline, it's a start. Um, Young people, depending on the provider that they're connecting to, can really be engaged in an interview process to choose where they want to work, what they want to do overall. That we're saying to think about that as well as we're talking and asking you to think about the grade and what you want to prioritize. It's and thinking about next year. It's also starting to think about, is there kind of like an easy win summer wise in terms of like an employment opportunity, whether it be paid, unpaid, a fellowship, or summer experience that we're thinking about with that as well. So thank you, Serge and Michael, for those for offering those. We're going to move on. Um, we're not going to we're not going to spend any time on these reflection questions. You will have this as a resource, the deck, only because we want to make sure that we want to get to the resources that we have here. But some of the things to think about, right, as you're starting to to plan this out, is also starting to deconstruct. Who did you work with? this past year, and what were the resources that you used with those students? How did you support the students to identify and secure employment opportunities during the school year and or summer? Is there something different that needs to happen? Is there anything you would have done differently working with the students? Something you want to change for next year? And are there organizations you want to build partnerships with next school year? The idea is that we know that you all are doing amazing things right now, but some of this work you don't have to do alone. Sometimes it's looking at what are some partnership opportunities, whether it be thinking about community service opportunities that young people can have, a 1 day, half day experience of doing a virtual job simulation with a partner you may have engaged or connected with. So what we want to kind of like talk through now is in terms of thinking about as we're talking about the future of work is really starting to think about how are you starting to gather and pull together these resources to make this work happen overall. When we think about partnership development, we're really thinking about it being designed to expose students to a goal, developing skills, a knowledge base, that there's a mentoring aspect associated with it, that they're practicing something, that it perhaps will lead to an opportunity. And then ultimately they're getting training, which is going to help them in future focus overall. That is a core for us when we think about the partnerships to be able to support young people to land work overall. And so some of the considerations is like in thinking about if you're going to do a partnership with someone is like, what is the vision for the partnership? Um, Again, we started to talk a little bit when we asked you about that priority skill set and why you chose that skill set to be able to connect that to the goals and the priorities for the next school year. Are there systems that exist to support the partnership overall? And when we say partnership, our department does work very specifically around doing partnerships for the 71 schools that are part of the New Visions Network. So we really do a lot of this work overall, but we also want a name to say that usually there's this experience of like there has to be someone in the school who is assigned to do this. I don't know what the the staffing patterns are at individual schools, but I want you to think about from just an individual level. Is there someone? Do you have a friend? Do you have someone who is working for a gym, or something that you can tap into and say, hey, would you be willing to work with me to just do kind of like a one-time experience to make this happen for young people? That we can start partnerships in the most simple, a simplified way in considerations. It doesn't have to be, a very deep, involved kind of like planning piece. It's like what is going to give, again, access to your young people to practice a skill set and build relationships for networking and social capital building that will begin to lay the groundwork of what future opportunities can look like overall. Um, some of the other things that we've done. So we're going to provide you with some direct resources to help you start to think about your networking and engagement and thinking about skill set building for young people and also job opportunities. So there are 3 resources that we want to recommend that you all tap into, that you elevate as you start to think about what's possible for your young people. One is a community partnership program. This is a program that is funded through the agency for Children's Services City Agency, but there are 11 CPP partnerships throughout the city. They host monthly meetings, and those monthly meetings are opportunities for them to share resources that are available in particular neighborhoods and communities that are free of charge. Some of these opportunities include that they have non-lottery slots for summer youth employment. They're working with some corporate partners that are looking to provide school year internship experiences for young people overall. easy wins, easy points of connections that are bringing resources into your school. Obviously, there's your community boards. In terms of making connections, there are individual committees that are associated with those community boards. They can help you in leveraging particular partners to come in to provide some directed facilitation and support in classrooms and after-school activities. And then finally, we've included a link for Partnership NYC. So Partnership NYC is actually an entity that mobilizes um, uh, private sector resources. So they are a consortium for a number of corporate partners that are interested in engaging and connecting with young people. Now, to be clear, we put this here not because we're suggesting that you would have a partnership with Partnership NYC, but this link directly actually goes to the page of every every corporate partner that is part of their consortium. And we've provided this list as a place for you to start to pick one of these corporate partners and do a little research. And then to make a connection to them directly. So we don't always have a direct list of who we can reach out to and who is interested. This is a list of corporate partners who have already said we are willing to engage and connect with schools and communities. And so it's a place for you to start to do that work overall. So what we also have is we've provided for you, and hopefully many of you are already connected to this, is that we provide a student opportunity, a monthly a biweekly student opportunities document where it is updated with internships, trainings, and events that are available for young people to access. We update this list all the way through June. We are on pause for the summer, and then we start up again in September. We want to encourage you to please, please, please connect with this resource. This is a way that you can also find opportunities to connect students through the summer, as I said, through the school year, which again is giving them an opportunity to kind of like practice the skill sets that you have already identified to prioritize in helping young people start to land in positions that will help them in terms of our future focus. We also have a toolkit that we've incorporated here for you that if you're interested in starting to think about what are some potential partnerships that you can have and how you can work towards those. Again, not going to click through all of these. We've double checked to make sure everyone has access to it. It gives an overview of what each resource would do. If I could highlight two resources that we really strongly encourage folks to think about engaging with is one of the things that we do is with any partner that we're going to engage with is that we do a memorandum of understanding, which kind of like really just lays out what are the things that you're going to ask a partner to do and what they're going to agree to overall. And then the other thing is related to a partnership point person, is really thinking about concretely if someone is going to oversee a partner for resources and supports for young people, what exactly do they need to consider in terms of the time commitment and whether or not it's real? I don't know. Maybe this is another opportunity to build out some work for a young person to potentially grow into. And then finally, just some additional resources and thinking about as you are starting to engage with your young people and starting to think about the work that they're doing, the skill sets that they're building, ways that you can start to gather intel from them on the kind of partnerships they'd like to engage and connect with, what that support looks like, and then a way to begin documenting the hours that they are doing of how they are connecting with these partners overall. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Lydell to just walk through these next set of resources.
So we are coming to the end. I know we have about 6 minutes left, and I just wanted to kind of share out some sample activities. This kind of harkens back to the conversation we had about grade-specific activities to support students in practicing the skills that we discussed and skills that we believe are going to be important for them to be able to get some entry points into jobs and be able to be successful in those roles. These sample activities you can kind of pick up and kind of run with as we share the other skills later on. If there's some other areas that you want to kind of bleed into these suggestions, we welcome that. But again, this is kind of what we've been working through based upon the corporate partners that we've had, the experiences with our summer academy, and all the work that we've done year by year in having maintained school partnerships with organizations to support these post-secondary skills and work-based learning skills development for our high school students. So you can kind of take these and run with them. But I did want to make sure we had an opportunity for folks to ask some questions. We have about 4 minutes left. And Kim, do we have an evaluation form for them? Is that something that?
So that is something that Sandy will share. The one thing
Mhm,
I do want to say is just here as it relates to um, where you see the activity around mock interviews,
mhm,
both individual and group. I would encourage folks to consider doing these mock interviews in person and also by video. So young people are actually able to practice that skill set because as we said to you in terms of employers are starting to utilize video interviews as their practice to engage with potential job hires. And so I guess Lydell, maybe 2 minutes or so for
yeah,
questions if there are
for
any,
questions.
and then we can transition to Sandy to close us out.
Okay, sounds good. So Sandy, you can stop the sharing so we can kind of take a look at folks and see if there are any questions that folks have. And folks, if you either have stuff in the chat or if you want to unmute, we welcome any and all questions.
What I will say is to Serge that this is being recorded, so you will have a access to this after this session. That will be available. And also to say, if folks don't have questions, that is no immediate questions, that is fine as well. Lydell and I are part of the community engagement and post-secondary pathways team here at New Visions. And so for those who are New Vision schools, you you can connect with Sandy to connect with us. And then if there are any other partners that are joining us outside of the New Visions network, you can also get our contact information directly from Sandy as well. We're happy to follow up in conversations with folks.